So, dear friends, welcome to my session on interdisciplinarity. For the next 60 minutes or so, we will be discussing what is interdisciplinarity. To begin the presentation, I have 5 questions for you. Here is the first question. Now, when we talk about psychology, is it an MA program or is it an MSc program? In the same vein, when we talk of linguistics, is it MA linguistics or MSc linguistics? One more question, one more related question. When we talk of economics, is it MA economics or MSc economics? As we all know, in some institutions, it is MA psychology, Master of Arts program. Whereas in some other institutions, both within the country and outside the country, they do not call it MA psychology. Instead, they call it MSc psychology. It becomes part of the social science program. Now, this question clarifies that disciplinary boundaries are not fixed. Instead, they are fluid and dynamic. So that is the first question. Now, let us go to the second question. What are the disciplines involved in a study on poverty or climate change? Imagine we have a roundtable conference on poverty. Now, which expert will be invited to a discussion of poverty? Now, we have 3 sets of answers. Now, in the first scenario, we have an expert from the Department of Economics, because a professor of economics, he or she is the one who talks about GDP, who talks about the poverty line, above the poverty line, below the poverty line. So obviously, in any discussion on poverty, we will have somebody from the Department of Economics. So this is scenario 1. Scenario 2, we are talking about poverty, we are discussing poverty, but in addition to a professor from the Department of Economics, we have somebody from, let us say, the Department of Nutrition, or somebody who is a medical doctor from the Department of Medicine, and we will include somebody from the Department of Administration. So in the first scenario, we had only one expert, whereas in the second case, we have at least 4 or 5 experts drawn from different disciplines, from different fields. So that is the second scenario. We have a third scenario where, in addition to experts from, let us say, the departments of economics, nutrition, medicine, administration, political science, we also have some 10 to 30 people from a close by village, from a neighboring village, people who are living below the poverty line. So we have 3 kinds of scenario, and I will talk further about this later. Now let us go to the third question. Is biochemistry a discipline by itself? Now, all of us are aware of the fact that biochemistry as a discipline was launched some 20 or 25 years ago. And 20 or 25 years ago, when biochemistry was launched, it was an interdisciplinary program. The chemistry part of it was taught by professors from the Department of Chemistry, and the bio part of biochemistry was taught by professors from the Department of Life Sciences. So it was very clearly an interdisciplinary program. But now, as it become autonomous, as it become independent, as it come of age, is it still an interdisciplinary program, or has it become a discipline by itself? So that is the third question. Now, the fourth question we will be talking about in the course of my lecture, in the course of my presentation, we will be talking about 3 terms: interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, and the how is interdisciplinary different from multidisciplinary? So that is the fourth question. And the last question. So in this session, we are talking about interdisciplinarity in undertaking interdisciplinary studies. So dear friends, these are 5 important questions. So these 5 questions would serve as a preamble and would prepare us for a discussion of what is interdisciplinarity. Now, dear friends, my presentation today for the next 60 minutes or so is divided into 5 parts. So in the first part of the presentation, I will be answering the question, what is a discipline and what constitutes a discipline? That is the first part of the presentation. In the second part of the presentation, I will be answering the question, what is interdisciplinarity? How do we define the term interdisciplinarity? Then in the third part of the presentation, I will be talking about the points of convergence and also the points of divergence among the three terms. And what are the three terms? Interdisciplinarity, multidisciplinarity, and transdisciplinarity. The similarities and also the differences among the three terms. Then in the fourth part of it, since my focus is on interdisciplinarity, I would like to talk about the need for interdisciplinarity. What are the advantages in pursuing an interdisciplinary project or a program? And at the same time, what are the obstacles that hinder the pursuit of interdisciplinary programs? And those of us who undertake interdisciplinary programs, how do we know that the program has been successful? What are the yardsticks that could be used to measure the success of any interdisciplinary program? And towards the end, I have one slide wherein we will talk about some action plans to promote interdisciplinarity. So these are the 5 units of my presentation today. Now let us go to the first one. So the first one is, what is a discipline? So what is a discipline? A discipline is also known as a subject. Okay, so the question is, what is a discipline or what is a subject? And I have 3 answers. Now, if you look into the dictionary, whether it is Oxford Dictionary or Cambridge Dictionary or Macmillan Dictionary, the dictionary will tell us a discipline is a field of study, a subject is a field of study. So that is the first definition. Now, there is a very interesting book on interdisciplinarity. The title itself is Interdisciplinarity, and it was authored by Joe Moran and published by Routledge. So if you refer to this particular book by Joe Moran, we have an apt definition of what a discipline is. So according to Moran, a discipline is a particular branch of learning or body of knowledge. So that is the second definition of interdisciplinarity. I have one more definition of interdisciplinarity. So this, who are the authors? I have acknowledged it. So this is from their publication in 2008. So according to these 2 authors, disciplines are scholarly communities that define which problems should be studied, advance certain central concepts and organizing theories, embrace certain methods of investigation, provide forums for sharing research and insights, and offer career paths for scholars. Okay, so these are the 3 definitions. So the question is, what is a discipline or what is a subject? Now, I want you to look at the second part of the slide. So in the second part of the slide, I have raised a question. So the question is, what constitutes a discipline? We talk of English studies as a discipline. We talk of sociology as a discipline. We talk of maths as a discipline. We talk of physics or chemistry as a discipline. So against this backdrop, we raise an important question. What constitutes a discipline? For which I have 4 answers. I have 4 points. Now, in psychology is a discipline, mathematics is a discipline, physics is a discipline. Now, in order to be called a discipline, that particular subject, that particular discipline should fulfill 4 criteria. So what are the 4 criteria? So the first criterion is, the question is, what constitutes a discipline? A discipline or a subject like physics, like maths, like chemistry should have a designated field of inquiry, and it should be relatively independent or autonomous. So this is the first criterion. And a discipline or a subject should satisfy or should fulfill this criterion. Now, the second criterion, whether it is English studies or maths or sociology, okay, so that discipline, that subject has its own goals and methodologies. And I would like to use an important expression. It has its own epistemic practices. I repeat, it has its own epistemic practices. And the word epistemic or epistemology is very important. As we all know, the word epistemology has been taken from philosophy, and it talks about theory of knowledge. So this is the second criterion. Physics or maths or English studies, it should have its own goals and methodologies. The third criterion is, a discipline or a subject should have its boundaries and it should have its own experts. And finally, I would like to underline this point. A discipline is not something natural. Instead, it is a construct. And I will talk about it a little later. And because it is a construct, the boundaries are not fixed. Instead, the boundaries are fluid, the boundaries are porous and dynamic. So dear friends, in this slide, I have answered two questions. What is a discipline and what constitutes a discipline? Now in the next slide, I'll give you two examples. Okay, so both the examples have been taken from humanities. So the first example is anthropology and the second example is English studies. Now in the previous slide, we raised the question, what constitutes a discipline? And we identified four criteria that go into the making or the constitution of a discipline. So here is an example, anthropology. Okay, so what is the designated field of inquiry? So anthropology as a discipline or as a subject, it studies anthropos, it studies human beings in society or culture. And what is its goal? What is its methodology? So the goal of anthropology or the methodology that is employed by anthropologists is to study human beings in society and culture, especially in terms of their origin, growth, and progress. And what is the methodology? As we all know, anthropology is considered a colonial subject. So therefore, the focus was to study non-Western societies, non-Western languages, and non-Western cultures. And the methodology that was largely employed was ethnography, particularly a qualitative method. And what are the boundaries of anthropology? All of us know that anthropology as a discipline is related to sociology because both talk about human beings and societies. So there is a relation, but there is also a difference. So dear friends, this is the first example. Let me go to one more example. English studies. So we have the four criteria, and let us find out how does English studies as a subject, as a discipline meet or fulfill these four criteria. So the first criterion is designated field of inquiry. So when we talk about English studies as a discipline, what are the designated fields of inquiry? As we all know, English studies talks about fiction, both long and short fiction. It deals with poetry, it deals with drama, it deals with criticism. So this is the designated field of inquiry for English studies. And what are the goals of English studies? Okay, so the goal is it studies imaginative texts. And in this context, I would like to talk about mimesis, which is a Greek word translated into English as imitation. So this is how Plato and Aristotle define art. Art as imitation, art as mimesis. And when you read a novel, or when you read a poem, or when you read a short story, what happens to you? It provides you enjoyment, aesthetic enjoyment. And what is the methodology adopted by people who are in the Department of English Studies, both teachers and students? How do they deal with the text? How do they look at the text? Okay, so they read and interpret the text. So therefore, the methodology adopted by people in the Department of English Studies is it is textual and interpretative. And what are the boundaries of English studies? As we all know, English studies is related to philosophy. Okay, it is related, but at the same time, it is different from philosophy. Okay, now that we have talked about what is a discipline and what constitutes a discipline, let us very briefly talk about disciplinarity. So what is disciplinarity? As we all know, disciplinarity is related to a discipline. It refers to expertise in a particular discipline, and it talks about awareness of what constitutes knowledge in that particular discipline, whether it is sociology or anthropology or physics or chemistry. And it also talks about the capacity or skill to obtain, to analyze, and use that knowledge. Now, dear friends, so far we have been talking about different disciplines and different subjects like mathematics, physics, chemistry, English studies. But then all of us do realize that at some point, these disciplinary boundaries evaporate or disappear. And then we talk about knowledge as a whole, knowledge as integrated, knowledge as holistic. Okay, so the point that I want to emphasize is this: knowledge is integrated, knowledge is whole, but for the sake of convenience, we have divided knowledge, we have carved up knowledge into various departments, various schools, and various disciplines. So this is only for the sake of convenience. Otherwise, there isn't much difference from English and philosophy. There isn't much difference from physics and chemistry at the higher level. I am not talking of the rudimentary levels, but at a higher level, they both deal with science. All disciplines, all subjects deal with knowledge. So therefore, when we talk of discipline and disciplinarity, we divide knowledge, we carve up knowledge, we segment knowledge into various units or various components, and this is for the sake of convenience. Okay, so we talk of discipline and disciplinarity in relation to establishment of departments, programs offered, whether it is an undergraduate program or a postgraduate program or a research program. And we talk of discipline and disciplinarity in relation to teaching, research, and certification and award of degrees. I have a PhD in English. I have a PhD in physics. I have a PhD in chemistry. Fine. Now, this is an interesting slide. We have different subjects, we have different disciplines, we have economics, we have sociology, we have linguistics, we have physics, we have chemistry. Now the question is, do all these subjects, do all these disciplines enjoy the same status, or some subjects superior and are some subjects inferior? So in other words, in this slide, I talk about Aristotle, okay, one of the fathers, one of the founders of Western philosophy, and I invoke the name of Aristotle to talk about how different disciplines and different subjects were divided. Aristotle talked about the hierarchy of subjects, hierarchy of disciplines, and he didn't stop there. Aristotle did two things. What are the two things? He divided subjects into theoretical science, practical science, and productive science. He didn't stop there. He also talked about the hierarchy because he made it very clear the theoretical sciences are superior to both practical sciences and productive sciences, or to put it differently, in the hierarchy, the apex, the key position is occupied by theoretical sciences, whereas at the other end of the spectrum, we have productive sciences, which are considered inferior. So Aristotle did two things. What are the two things that Aristotle did? Number one, he divided subjects into three categories: theoretical sciences, practical sciences, and productive sciences. And he also talks about hierarchy. He talked about which are superior subjects and which are inferior subjects. Fine. I would like to continue the discussion. And in the previous slide, I talked about Aristotle, and I argued that it was Aristotle who talked about dividing knowledge into various subjects and disciplines. And he also talked about the hierarchy among various subjects or various disciplines. Now, a similar trend is noticed in the writings of Auguste Comte and also Willem Dilthey. Okay, Comte lived from 1798 to 1857. He was a positivist and he is one of the founders of modern sociology, along with Max Weber and Karl Marx. Look at the word positivist. What is positivism in sociology, or who is a positivist? Not only in the domain of sociology, but also in the domain of philosophy. Okay, I'll just put it in two sentences. A positivist or positivism rejects metaphysics, number one, and number two, positivism or positivist relies on empirical data. So therefore, Auguste Comte, one of the founders of modern sociology, he made it very clear that the social sciences, subjects like anthropology or sociology or education or linguistics, they should adopt the models of natural sciences. In other words, Auguste Comte, one of the founders of modern sociology, was instrumental in transferring the methods of the natural sciences to the social sciences, because the natural sciences, that particular paradigm was considered superior. Now, this trend was continued by the German philosopher Dilthey when he talked about knowledge, when he talked about different subjects or different disciplines. He divided them into two categories, into natural sciences, and the German term is Naturwissenschaften, and human sciences, and the German term is Geisteswissenschaften. In other words, Dilthey made it very clear that the human sciences should copy or imitate or emulate the objective methodology of the natural sciences. In other words, they should be anchored on, they should be founded on concrete empirical data. Now, I brought in Aristotle, Coe, and Dilthey in order to underline the point. Not all disciplines enjoy the same status and power. We have various subjects, various disciplines, but not all of them are equal. Not all of them enjoy the same status and power. Some are considered superior and some are considered inferior. In other words, power underwrites discipline or subject. Now, in this slide, very briefly, I would like to talk about the history of the term interdisciplinarity. Now, all of us as academics, all of us know and all of us realize that in the last 5, 10, 15 years, we have been talking about the term interdisciplinarity and it has become a buzzword. But then if you look at the history tells us very clearly the term was used in the 1920s and 1930s. In other words, even though we are right now, we are in 2023 and we are talking about interdisciplinarity and interdisciplinary projects, but then we need to realize that this is not a new term, nor is it a novel term, because already in the 1920s and 1930s, which means 100 years ago or 90 years ago, 90 years ago or 100 years ago, the term interdisciplinarity was already in vogue. But when exactly was the term first used? Okay, so we have Andrew Abbott. Okay, he tells us that the first entry for the word interdisciplinarity was found in the second edition of the Oxford English Dictionary, and the term was first used in the Journal of Educational Psychology in 1937. Okay, and we have one more quote. But the Social Science Research Council and the Laura Spelman Rockefeller Foundation were already focused on the problem of eliminating barriers between the social sciences by the mid-1920s. So which means, even though it has become a buzzword today, we need to realize that it is already 90 years old or even 100 years old. Okay, dear friends, in this slide, I would like to talk about what is interdisciplinarity. I talked about the history of interdisciplinarity in the previous slide. So in this particular slide, I would like to talk about what is interdisciplinarity. Okay, I have three ideas. So the first idea is interdisciplinarity involves communication or collaboration between or across academic disciplines. At this point, I would like to clarify, interdisciplinarity brings in two disciplines together, but it is not restricted to just two disciplines or two subjects. It could be two, it could be three, it could be four as well. So the point is, interdisciplinarity involves collaboration. It involves a conversation between two disciplines or across academic disciplines. Okay. Please go to the third paragraph. Interdisciplinarity brings together distinctive components of two or more disciplines in the creation of new knowledge, operational procedures, or artistic expression. So what happens when two subjects are brought together? What happens when two or three disciplines are brought together? What happens when there is a conversation between two subjects or two disciplines? What happens? There is a redrawing, there is a reconfiguration of boundaries, and as a result, new knowledge is created, new knowledge is born. So in other words, if I can summarize this slide in two words, what is interdisciplinarity or what happens in interdisciplinarity? Two things happen. What are the two things? two or more disciplines are brought together, and what we witness is we witness an integration of two or more subjects, and because of this integration of two or more subjects or disciplines, we witness the creation of new knowledge. So this is interdisciplinarity. So dear friends, this is the first part of the presentation. So in the first part of the presentation, I have answered three questions. What are the three questions? What is a discipline? What constitutes a discipline? And what is interdisciplinarity? Now, in the next part, I would like to clarify the difference or the distinction between inter and multidisciplinarity. And I will not stop with this. I will bring in a third term, so that is transdisciplinarity. So which means we have with us three terms. So the first term is interdisciplinarity. The second term is multidisciplinarity. And the third term is transdisciplinarity. A lot of people use these terms synonymously. They do not make any distinction between interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary. And some of them do not make any distinction between the term multidisciplinary and transdisciplinary. They use it synonymously. They substitute one word for another word, one term by another term. Okay, so I would like to make it very clear. There are points of convergence. There are similarities among the three terms. But at the same time, there are nuanced differences or nuanced distinctions among the three terms. So therefore, we as academics, we need to have conceptual clarity. We should know in what sense or from what point of view is interdisciplinarity similar to or analogous to or close to multidisciplinarity. And we should also know in what sense is multidisciplinarity close to, or how does multidisciplinarity resemble transdisciplinarity. So we should be aware of it. We should be aware of the similarities, that is the points of convergence. And at the same time, we should be aware of and we should be clear about what are the fundamental differences among the three terms. Okay, so in this slide and in the following slide, I would like to talk about the similarities on the one hand and the differences on the other between these two terms. So what are the two terms that we will be discussing in this and in the following slide? Interdisciplinarity and multidisciplinarity. So what is multidisciplinarity? Please look at the word juxtaposition. So multidisciplinarity refers to the simple juxtaposition of two or more disciplines. Okay, so here is physics, sitting next to physics is chemistry, or here is philosophy, sitting next to philosophy is literature. They may have a conversation or they may not have a conversation. Just because two departments are sitting together, just because two subjects are placed alongside each other, just because there is a juxtaposition of two or more disciplines, it is not necessary, it is not essential that there is a conversation between these two subjects or among these three or four subjects. So straight away, I would like to clarify, multidisciplinary or multidisciplinarity refers to or points to the simple juxtaposition of two or more disciplines. So two disciplines happen to sit next to each other. They may have a conversation, they may not have a conversation. I would like to continue. The relationship between the disciplines is merely one of proximity. There is no real integration between them. The different elements retain their original identity and the existing structure of knowledge is not questioned. So this is a quote from Klein. So Klein makes it very clear. Two or more subjects, two or more disciplines, they are juxtaposed. They happen to sit next to each other, but there is no real conversation between them or among them. As a result of this, because there is no conversation, there is no integration, and because there is no integration, there is very little new knowledge. So this is about multidisciplinary. On the contrary, interdisciplinarity is always transformative in some way or the other, And because it is transformative, it produces new forms of knowledge. So what happens is the major difference between interdisciplinarity and multidisciplinarity is in multidisciplinarity, different subjects or different disciplines come together. They may have a conversation, they may not have a conversation, or even if they have a conversation, it may not be a deep conversation or a conversation at the fundamental level, questioning the disciplinary boundaries and the identities. As a result of which, there is no integration. And because of the lack of integration, there is very little new knowledge. So this is about multidisciplinary. On the contrary, in interdisciplinarity, two things happen. There is a conversation between two subjects, or maybe two or more subjects. And because there is a conversation, what happens is there is integration. It leads to the conversation, leads to integration. And because of this integration, there is transformation, as a result of which there is new knowledge. Okay, so here is a quote from Roland Barthes. So Roland Barthes writes, interdisciplinarity begins effectively when the solidarity of the old disciplines breaks down. So breaks down is a key expression in the interest of a new subject and a new language. So dear friends, here is one more slide on inter and multidisciplinarity, for which I will refer to an article authored by Nisani. The title of the article is Fruit Salads and Smoothies, a Working Definition of Interdisciplinarity. So this is an interesting article. So through an example, the author Nisani makes it very clear what is disciplinarity, what is multidisciplinarity, and what is interdisciplinarity. He talks about fruits. That is why the title of the article is Fruit Salads and Smoothies, a working definition of interdisciplinarity. Okay, you have an apple, or you have a banana, or you have a mango. Okay, so what is the option? The option is you cut the apple and eat it, or you bite into the guava or the mango and you eat it. So this is disciplinarity. In other words, you eat each fruit separately. Okay, so how long to eat only an apple? Oh, it is boring. I would like to taste it. I want a different taste. I am sick and tired of eating apples. I am sick and tired of eating bananas or guavas. Okay, I want some different. So what do you do? Okay, so here is an option for you. You take an apple, you cut it into pieces, and you take a banana, you cut it into pieces, then you take a mango, you slice it and cut it into pieces, put them all in a bowl, and you have fruit salad. So this would be multidisciplinary. Okay, so what is disciplinarity? You have an apple and only an apple and you eat it, or you have a banana, only a banana and you eat it. Eat each fruit separately. That is disciplinarity. So multidisciplinarity, you have a bowl. So you have banana slices, you have apple pieces, you have mango pieces, you have put them together, you mix it, and you have fruit salad and eat it. But what we need to realize is the fruit bowl is there. So you have mango pieces. So the mango pieces retain their individual identity. The mango piece tastes only like a mango. It doesn't taste like a banana. It doesn't taste like a guava. In other words, it retains its identity. It retains its original identity. Now, dear friends, there is a third option. So the first option is you eat each fruit separately. The second option is you make a fruit salad, but in the fruit salad, each fruit retains its original identity. The third option is you take a mixie or you take a blender, you put the fruit pieces, whether it is mango or apple or banana or guava or pineapple, and you make it into a smoothie. You make fruit juice. So that becomes interdisciplinarity. So the key difference between multi and inter is in multidisciplinarity, there is no real integration, as a result of which the mango pieces or the apple pieces, they retain their original identity. Whereas in a smoothie, whereas in in a in a glass of fruit juice, what happens is, where are the banana pieces? Where are the apple pieces? They have all disappeared. There is integration, there is transformation, as a result of which there is a new taste. Okay, so this is how Nisani clarifies the differences and the distinctions between disciplinarity and multi and interdisciplinarity. So, dear friends, now I would like to introduce one more term. So, the third term is transdisciplinarity. So far, we have been talking about interdisciplinarity and we have also been talking about multidisciplinarity. So, now it is time to introduce the third term. So, that term is transdisciplinarity. So, we have two tasks ahead of us. So, the first task is, how do we define the term transdisciplinary or transdisciplinarity? And the second task or the second exercise is, how do we distinguish or how do we differentiate transdisciplinarity from both inter and multidisciplinarity? And I would like to take the help of two experts. So in the first line, you see the name Nicholas Coe. So I would like to take his help when I try to differentiate between these three terms, inter, multi, and trans. And I will also like to take the help of Klein. He has written an article on transdisciplinarity, and he also clarifies the crucial differences and distinction between multidisciplinary and transdisciplinary. Dear friends, I want you to go back to the first slide. So in the first slide, I raised 5 questions, and that was to prepare you as a preamble, as an introduction for this lecture on interdisciplinarity. So there was a question. Imagine we have a roundtable conference or roundtable discussion on poverty. Who will be invited for this conference? I talked about 3 scenarios. So in the first scenario, we have an expert from the Department of Economics, because he or she is the one who talks about GDP, who talks about the poverty index. In the second scenario, in addition to an economist, we have somebody from, let us say, the Department of Nutrition, because poverty and nutrition, they are closely related. We have somebody from the Department of Medicine, because poverty and medicine, particularly the negative effects of poverty on human beings, particularly from a medical point of view, they are very closely related. And we also have somebody from administration, because he or she is the one who will initiate and also oversee programs related to poverty. So this was scenario 2. In scenario 3, in addition to experts from the departments of economics, nutrition, administration, medicine, we also have some people, some real people, okay, from the neighboring slums or from the neighboring villages, people who are living below the poverty line. Since we are talking about poverty, let it not be completely theoretical and expert driven or expert oriented. Let us also listen to people who are living below the poverty line. So I gave you 3 scenarios. Fine. Now I will continue the discussion here. So this slide talks about the differences between the 3 crucial terms: interdisciplinarity, multidisciplinarity, and transdisciplinarity. So interdisciplinarity, we have already talked about it. 2 key features. There is a conversation between or among 2 or more subjects. And because of the conversation, there is integration. And because there is integration happening between different subjects or different disciplines, new knowledge is created. So this is about interdisciplinarity. Multidisciplinarity, different subjects come together. They may have a conversation, they may not have a conversation, or even if they have a conversation, it may not be at a very deep level, challenging the boundaries of particular disciplines. It may be at the peripheral level. So as a result of which, there is no integration, and because of the lack of integration, very little new knowledge is produced. So this is about multidisciplinarity. Now, what is transdisciplinarity, and what would be the distinguishing or what would be the key features of transdisciplinarity? Now, Klein in his essay or Klein in his article, he identifies three crucial factors. So what are the three crucial factors? Look at the word transdisciplinarity. I want you to focus your attention on the prefix trans. So according to Klein, the first point is, the first indicator is transdisciplinary. So the prefix trans, that clearly suggests that in a transdisciplinary program or in a transdisciplinary project or endeavor, disciplinary boundaries are transcended. We have drawn boundaries. This is economics, this is anthropology, this is sociology, this is physics, this is chemistry, even physical boundaries. Okay, so in many of our institutions, whether it is a college or a university, we have separate buildings for different subjects, different disciplines. Okay, this is chemistry, this is physics, even the physical structure. Okay, so it clearly indicates that disciplinary boundaries are very clearly drawn. But in the case of transdisciplinarity, there is a transcendence, and this is indicated by the prefix trans. There is a transcendence, or to put it a little negatively, there is a transgression of disciplinary boundaries. Okay, so the disciplinary boundaries are not sacred, they are not sacrosanct. They are there to be crossed, reconfigured. Okay, so the first indicator of transdisciplinarity is there is a transcendence or there is a transgression of disciplinary boundaries. Point number one. Point number two, I want you to go back to the example that I gave you. If there is a conference on poverty, who will be the experts invited? We have experts from different subjects or different disciplines. But in addition to experts, we also need to listen to people who are living below the poverty line, because they are the stakeholders. We can talk about it from a theoretical point of view, maybe from a medical point of view, maybe from an economic point of view, maybe from a nutrition point of view. But we do not have real experience of poverty. Whereas those who are living below the poverty line, they are the genuine stakeholders and we have to listen to them. So therefore, the second crucial indicator of transdisciplinarity is, as a subject, as a discipline, it involves non-academic stakeholders. So in a discussion of poverty, okay, who are the non-academic stakeholders? People who are living below the poverty line. They are the non-academic stakeholders and they contribute to the discussion more than what the experts would contribute to the discussion. Because the experts would talk only from a theoretical point of view, whereas these non-academic stakeholders, they talk from their real life experience. And number three, unlike interdisciplinarity and unlike multidisciplinarity, transdisciplinarity calls for societal impact in the sense it focuses on problem solving. Not that we stop at the theoretical level. What is poverty? The economics professor talks about what is poverty. The nutrition professor talks about what are the harmful effects of poverty on nutrition, nutritional deficiency. The medical expert also talks about what are the negative effects of poverty on the body. Okay, so these are theoretical discussions. But how to address poverty, how to reduce poverty, how to increase the buying capacity of these people living under the poverty line, under or below the poverty line. So therefore, the third dimension of transdisciplinarity is the focus is on problem solving. And because the focus is on problem solving, it carries with it the dimension of societal impact. So dear friends, I have clarified what is a discipline, what constitutes a discipline, what is interdisciplinarity, and I have also clarified what is meant by multidisciplinarity and transdisciplinarity. But more importantly, I have also clarified the crucial differences between inter and multi and transdisciplinarity. Okay, now let us come to the last part of it. Now, the last part of it is Okay, at least at the theoretical level, at least at the conceptual level, all of us are aware of the fact that interdisciplinarity is better than disciplinary endeavors. Instead of I working on a project all by myself, it is better that I collaborate with somebody from the neighboring departments. So which means physics and chemistry can come together, or chemistry and life sciences can come together, or sociology and anthropology can come together, or English and philosophy can come together and undertake interdisciplinary projects, or organize interdisciplinary programs. So all of us at the theoretical level, at the conceptual level, we are aware of the fact that we need to undertake, we need to launch interdisciplinary projects. But then the question is, even though we have this awareness, even though we have this realization, why is it on board we have very few interdisciplinary projects or endeavors? Okay, so this slide will address the question. So therefore the question is, why is it that we have very few interdisciplinary endeavors or projects, in spite of knowing fully well that interdisciplinarity is better than disciplinarity? Okay, so I have thought of a few answers, I have thought of a few points. So the first one is poor career opportunities for interdisciplinary researchers. Okay, imagine there is a vacancy in a department of chemistry. Okay, the head of the department or the principal or the vice chancellor, would he or she prefer somebody from the chemistry background or somebody from the biochemistry background? Okay, I don't give an answer. I want you to think. Okay, so therefore, the question is why very few interdisciplinary endeavors? So the first point is poor career opportunities for interdisciplinary researchers. The second point that I would like to highlight is the low esteem of interdisciplinary research by monodisciplinary colleagues. A physics professor looks down upon someone who has done an interdisciplinary project. Okay, so the third point, lack of opportunities to publish research findings in high-ranking journals. Okay, most of the high-ranking journals, they are discipline-oriented, they are discipline-specific. This does not mean, or this does not imply that we do not have interdisciplinary journals, journals that promote interdisciplinarity, but there are very few high-ranking journals that promote interdisciplinarity. So this is obviously another hurdle, and this will tell us why there are very few interdisciplinary projects. The fourth point that I would like to talk about is the silo syndrome, disciplinary ghettos, academic tribalism, where we do not want to work with our colleagues. We want to work in isolation. So this is the silo syndrome. The next point is discrimination by referees against interdisciplinary research proposals and publications. The next point is, when I do an interdisciplinary project, I am from the Department of English. Imagine I have to collaborate with somebody from the Department of Sociology or Anthropology or Philosophy and undertake an interdisciplinary project. I need to know my English, and I also need to know philosophy. I also need to know sociology. I also need to know anthropology. So which means I need to invest a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of energy. So this is one hurdle. This is another hurdle that comes in the way of embracing interdisciplinarity. And the next point, I need to learn the other disciplines. I'm from English. If I have to do a project in collaboration with a philosophy professor, I need to learn philosophy vocabulary, philosophy methodology, and philosophy techniques, which means, as I already talked about, I need to invest a lot of time, a lot of energy, and I need to put in a lot of effort. So the last point is lack of trust and presence of ego among researchers. A senior chemistry professor would not like to join hands with a junior mathematics professor and undertake an interdisciplinary project. So dear friends, so at the theoretical level, at the conceptual level, all of us know what are the advantages of interdisciplinarity. But the ground reality is we do not have very many interdisciplinary endeavors. So therefore, the question is, what prevents or what hinders or what hampers the pursuit of interdisciplinary endeavors? I have given some examples. Fine. Now, the next two slides are interesting. Okay, in spite of all these hurdles, in spite of all these obvious hurdles, some individual, some professor, or some department, he or she, or some department, they have undertaken some interdisciplinary project. So now we want to assess, we want to evaluate, and we want to find out how successful this interdisciplinary project has been. Okay, so I have already referred to this article by Nisani, Fruit Salads and Smoothies, a working definition of interdisciplinarity. So in the second part of this essay, Nisani talks about 4 variables which indicate the richness or the success of an interdisciplinary project. So therefore, the question is, an interdisciplinary project has been undertaken, but how do we gauge, how do we measure the richness or the success of this interdisciplinary project? So it is in this context, it is against this backdrop that Nisani talks about 4 variables. Okay, so the first variable is he wants to find out, you have to find out how many disciplines were involved in this project. Okay, only 2 disciplines or more than 2? When you say more than 2, how many? 3 or 4 or 5 or 6? So the first variable tells us the number of disciplines involved will tell you how successful the project has been. Okay, I'll give you an example. I'll give you 2 examples, in fact. So we talk of cultural studies. All English departments, they have a program, or at least they have a paper on cultural studies. Now, as we know, cultural studies is a discipline and it involves not only literature, but also sociology, anthropology, semiotics, politics, philosophy. So therefore, how do we measure whether cultural studies is truly an interdisciplinary program? We know that it involves quite many subjects, quite many disciplines. And according to Nisani, the first variable is the number of disciplines involved would tell you how successful, how rich the project has been. So going by this indicator, going by this yardstick, we come to the realization that cultural studies is truly an interdisciplinary or even a multidisciplinary project. So that is the first variable. Now the second variable, distance, close or remote. 2 subjects have been brought together. Now how closely knit are they? Or is there any distance? Is there any gap between these 2 subjects? Okay, now literature students, English study students, we are all familiar with Levi-Strauss. He has undertaken structural analysis or structural studies of myth, various Greek myths, particularly the Oedipus myth. So here, 2 or more subjects have been brought together. Anthropology, particularly structural anthropology, and linguistics have been brought together. So therefore, the question is, okay, 2 subjects, 2 disciplines have been brought together. Anthropology and linguistics, linguistics have been brought together. But how close? Is there any gap? Is there any difference? Is there any distance? So therefore, the second variable according to Nisani is distance. If 2 subjects have been brought together very closely, that is an indicator, that is a mark of success. But if there is any distance, if there is any gap, or if there is any hesitation between 2 subjects to come together closely, then there is some problem. So the first variable is the number of disciplines involved. The second variable is distance. The third variable is novelty. Okay, eating a banana, okay, it's okay, but for how many days will you eat bananas? Okay, so when it gets boring, what do? You mix banana with apple or with mango or with guava. Now, once again, you get tired of fruit salads. So what do? You want some smoothie. Okay, so the question of novelty. So the third variable is novelty. Okay, cultural studies. It caught everybody's imagination. Why? There was novelty. There was the element of novelty because under the banner of cultural studies, we were talking about comics, we are talking about fairy tales, we are talking about films, something unheard of in literature departments, in literature classes. So therefore, there is the element of novelty. So that is the variable. And the last variable, we are talking about how to measure the richness or the success of an interdisciplinary project. So Nisani talks about four variables. So the fourth variable, the last variable, the percentage of integration, the amount of integration or the level of integration that has happened or that has taken place. Okay, how did we define interdisciplinarity? Two or more subjects come together. They come together very closely, as a result of which there is integration. And because there is integration between or among various subjects or various disciplines, new knowledge is created, new knowledge is born. So therefore, the fourth variable is integration, the percentage of integration or the level of integration. So the more the integration, the better or the richer or the more successful the program is. So dear friends, we have talked about what is a discipline. We have talked about what is disciplinarity, and we have also talked about what are the differences and the similarities between or among the three terms: interdisciplinarity, multidisciplinarity, and also transdisciplinarity. Okay, this is my penultimate slide. I have one more slide. So here I would like to talk of overcoming disciplinary tribalism. Earlier I talked about the silo syndrome. Departments want to work in isolation. Individual professors, they want to work in isolation. Okay, so my talk suggests that we should shed the silo syndrome. We should shed the isolationist syndrome, and we should work together as a team. Professors should come together, teachers should come together, departments should come together, because we need to embrace interdisciplinarity. The advantages of an interdisciplinary project, the advantages are far greater than the advantages of a disciplinary program or a pursuit. Okay, so therefore in this slide, I am suggesting, not only am I suggesting, but I am also recommending overcoming disciplinary tribalism. I would like to talk about 6 points. Mutual trust and respect should be there between teachers and between departments, and only then we will be in a position to embrace interdisciplinarity. Then confidence in one's own discipline without being aggressive or defensive. My footing is strong. I may teach philosophy, I may teach sociology, I may teach anthropology. My footing is strong. I am grounded in my own discipline. I have high levels of confidence, but that should not prevent me from being defensive and erecting fences around me. I should be open. I should have the confidence to embrace another discipline. Then the third point, space and time for sharing of knowledge, different framing of problems, and construction of methods. Then the fourth one, whenever we talk of interdisciplinarity, okay, so we do it at the theoretical level, at the conceptual level, but we shouldn't stop at the theoretical or conceptual level. We should go far and focus on problem solving as well. Not that the entire focus is on problem solving. As academics, we need to talk, we need to discuss, we need to ruminate over ideas theoretically, conceptually, but at the same time, also focus on problem solving. The penultimate point is sharing of resources. And finally, heads of departments and deans of schools, deans of faculties and administrators, they should even think of incentives for undertaking interdisciplinary projects so that teachers, students, researchers will be motivated to embrace interdisciplinarity and undertake interdisciplinary projects. So dear friends, this is my last slide. So far, the discussion has largely been theoretical, and in this slide, how to translate interdisciplinarity into programs, into projects, into seminars, into conferences. In other words, I would like to suggest, this is only a suggestion, this is only a recommendation. So I would like to suggest an action plan. So this action plan is meant to translate interdisciplinarity into actuality or into reality. It could be a project work, it could be a seminar, it could be a conference, or it could be the title of a PhD dissertation or an MA dissertation. So action plan. So I would like to suggest 4 points. Number one, as departments, as schools, as faculties, maybe you can think of organizing some interdisciplinary or interdepartmental seminars or conferences. Maybe two departments from the humanities can come together, two or more, not necessarily two, not restricted to. Two or more departments can come together and you can organize a seminar or a conference. And similarly, two from the science departments, the science school, the science faculty, okay, particularly hard sciences, physics and chemistry, or life sciences and chemistry, or you can involve mathematics as well, computer science. Okay, so two from humanities and two from sciences. Okay, so you can think of and a joint endeavor, interdisciplinary endeavor. So that is the first point that I wanted to talk about. The second point is when you revise your curriculum, whether it is at the undergraduate level or at the postgraduate level, ensure that there is at least one interdisciplinary paper. For instance, since I teach English, I can give a couple of examples. We have papers, we have introduced papers like literature and philosophy, literature and ecology, okay, or digital humanities, environmental humanities. So this is from the domain of English. Now, in your own subject, in your own discipline, you can think of interdisciplinary papers. So next time when the department, when the school revises the curriculum, please ensure that interdisciplinary papers are introduced. And this is not just at the postgraduate level, but also at the undergraduate level, so that students have a broad vision, a holistic vision rather than a narrow vision. Okay, the third point that I would like to suggest is in all institutions, whether it is a college or a university, the master students are required to do some project, write some dissertation for 60 to 70 to 80 pages. Okay, you suggest some interdisciplinary topics as teachers, as professors, because students seek our help. What subject to choose, what area to choose, what topic to choose. Okay, so we can suggest some interdisciplinary topics. Then the last suggestion is whether they are your postgraduate students or they are your research scholars, you insist that they should sign up for at least one interdisciplinary MOOC course or MOOC program. For instance, I have some research scholars, I teach English. So I recommend that they do a program, they do a course, not program, sorry, they do a course in philosophy, or they do a course in sociology or anthropology related to the research area. Okay, so dear friends, that is the end of my presentation. I would also suggest a few references. I would like to suggest 4 books. So the first book is an edited volume or an edited anthology published by the Oxford University Press, titled The Oxford Handbook of Interdisciplinarity. There are various essays on interdisciplinarity written from diverse points of view, from economics, from sciences, from English, from arts. Okay, so you can pick and choose. So the second one is an interesting book by Klein. I have already referred to Klein at least on 2 occasions. So this was published in 1990 and the title of the book is Interdisciplinarity History, Theory and Practice. This is an interesting book. Now the next one, this is a monograph authored by Joe Moran, and the title of the book is Interdisciplinarity. It is a monograph and it was published by Routledge in the year 2002. I found this book good, but the only limitation as far as this book is concerned is it has been written predominantly from an English studies point of view. But you can always read the first chapter, the introductory chapter, where Moran talks about interdisciplinarity in general terms. And the last book is published by Sage. The year of publication is 2008. We have two authors, and the title of the book is Interdisciplinary Research, Process and Theory. So dear friends, let me summarize. So in the first part of the presentation, I talked about what is a discipline and what constitutes a discipline. And I also clarified the term disciplinarity. Then I moved on to the clarification of related terms: interdisciplinarity, multidisciplinarity, and transdisciplinarity. Then towards the end, I also highlighted what are the hurdles that prevent us from embracing interdisciplinarity and pursuing interdisciplinary projects. And I also put down a few recommendations as how individual professors and different departments can come together and undertake interdisciplinary projects by way of organizing conferences, seminars, and also other programs. Thank you very much. Thanks for this opportunity from Ramanujan College, and I wish you all the best, and I am sure you will pursue some interdisciplinary project. Thank you.
Thank you.